President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. We would like to now hand over to counsel for Mr. Nuntia to continue putting the questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to inform the Chamber that I have agreed with the Keusampan team to use most of their time. Maybe they have one final question, but most likely not. Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. I would like now to turn to the meeting that took place in April 1975 in the provincial townhouse. Would you be able to give an exact date of that meeting?
Response. I'm afraid I do not remember the date exactly because, as I mentioned, I was a low-level combatant who attended the meeting along with other people. I actually was at the meeting, not attending the meeting. I was at the meeting because I had to guard the vicinity of the meeting.
But was it rather 3 or 4 days after the liberation, or was it maybe 10 days after the liberation of Pursat?
Response. It was on the 19th of April 1975. And I don't remember how long that meeting lasted. It could have been 1 or 2 days.
Mr. Witness, I'm asking you this question because in one of your statements to the OCIJ, that would be D125-216, ERN number 00284426. On the second page of that interview, you have stated that this meeting took place about 10 days after liberating Pursat province. Is it fair to say that what you have said to the OCIJ is not correct?
Response. No, it was not correct. I was there for a few days before the event happened. It could have never been that long.
Thank you. Yesterday you have used the word rounding up. But you've also testified that people who attended this meeting at the Provincial House were arriving in their own vehicles. Now, would you be able to make a distinction between the people that were brought in trucks to the Provincial House and the people that were arriving there in their own vehicles?
Response. I was standing at the place. I did not know whether these people were forced to come to the area because I only saw people on trucks, and I would then open the gate to allow these people to access to the meeting place. They were not escorted by armed people, and that's all I remember.
Can you make a description of the vehicles with people in it that were leaving afterwards? I mean, how did their vehicles look like when they left?
Response. As a peasant, I was not well informed to identify the mark or the trademark of the vehicles. They were somehow small vehicles carrying a few people, and there were some trucks. But when people were loaded into the provincial hall, they used only small vehicles, not the trucks.
When you were guarding the provincial house, and when the people start arriving, were you standing in the vicinity of the gate that these people went through?
Response. I was about 40 to 50 meters away from that gate. The provincial hall was near the main road, but I was not standing guard next to the gate. I was about 40 to 50 meters away from it, as I said. And we had to take turn standing guard at this vicinity, because after my turn, then the other people would come to replace me, and it was a kind of shift that we had to carry out.
You have testified earlier that, according to your estimate, about 200 people were gathered in the provincial house. Do you remember whether you also actually saw the same amount of 200 people entering the gate of the provincial house complex?
Response. I believe that there were people coming into the meeting place. Other people could have entered the provincial hall through the gate, but my estimation was at that time about 200 people or so, and I was standing there like a lion rather than a person who could take note of how many people could be coming to the place.
When people entered the gate and you were watching, Were they asked questions by your colleagues?
Response: I wouldn't dare ask people questions because I was there. They are standing like a concrete lion, and people would just go into the places to the meeting room, and that's all I had to do. After that, the gate was closed and the meeting proceeded, and it concluded, and people left.
But my question to you was whether you saw your colleagues asking questions to the people that were entering the premises of the provincial house.
Response: I didn't ask people questions, but my colleagues did ask a few questions, very simple questions. For example, where they would be leading or heading to next.
Can you explain the chamber what you mean with this specific question? What was the reason for this specific question? What did your colleagues try to ask?
Response: we were not supposed to ask people questions, and I don't remember whether members of my group were asking some questions, but other people were heard asking some questions. This question was like asked when people converse with one another, like chit-chatting, and that's all. Because I heard people ask some of the people where they would be going, and then they would say they were there to attend study session or to see the King Father, and that's what I heard.
That is indeed what you have testified, but that was in relation to when people were leaving the premises, if I understand it correctly. The question to you is whether you have seen your colleagues asking questions to the people when they were entering the premises. For instance, did they ask what their names were, where they were from, if they were soldiers, for instance, what their rank was? Were questions like that asked?
Response: I don't know, because in my unit no one was asking these people any question, and I just noted that these people were in civilian clothes, and we presumed that they were civilians, not soldiers, and we never exchanged or we never talked to one another about them. I was just standing guard next to the road where the trucks would be coming in and going out.
Do you know whether it was allowed for anybody, if they were interested, to enter the gate of the premises of the provincial house? Or did everybody had to identify themselves, for instance?
ទៅធ្វើអីកន្លែងហ្នឹងបានគេបើកទ្វារឲ្យចូលឬក៏មនុស្សណាក៏ចូលបាននៅពេលដែលលោកយាមនោះណា
Response. People who walked would not be allowed to walk in through the gate. But if those people were on a vehicle, then they would be allowed to get into the premises. So, in other words, people did not walk into the premises. They were entering the premises by a vehicle.
And it is correct when I say that you testified earlier that you don't know if those vehicles from which they came down and entered were Khmer Rouge vehicles or Lon Nol soldiers' vehicles, correct?
ថារថយន្តនោះវាជារបស់អតីតទាហានលន់ណុលឬក៏ជារបស់យោធាខ្មែរក្រហមទេតើលោកបញ្ជាក់បានទេចំណុចនេះអញ្ចឹងឬយ៉ាងដូចម្ដេច
Response. I may say that when I was a combatant, I never saw any of the Khmer Rouge soldier being in a possession of a vehicle. These vehicles were seized or were taken from the cities. I knew that people call some of the vehicles American vehicles, and there was some small car that can accommodate 5 to 6 people on each car, the black sedan, for example.
I would like to get back to you now on the number of 200. Could you please describe again to the chamber how you arrived at that particular number of 200?
ឈានដល់ការសន្និដ្ឋានថាមានមនុស្ស200នាក់តើលោកអាចនិយាយបានទេ
The President, Mr. Witness, please hold on. Co-prosecutor, you may now proceed. National Co-prosecutor, Mr. President, this question was already put to the witness yesterday. I asked him about this number of the participants, and he already responded with the number, and I believe that the question just put by my learned colleague on the other side of the courtroom is repetitive.
Mr. President, I agree with my learned colleague. The question was asked, but it was merely an introductory question to, if you will, the method on which the witness came to his conclusion that there were 200. You said it was yesterday 200. Why 200? Why not 150 or 180 or 220? Why 200?
ហេតុអ្វីក៏មិនមែនជា250មិនក៏200ប្រកបម្លេះបាទ
Response. This number is calculated against the capacity of the hall itself, because I believe that the room could accommodate roughly 200 people, no more than that. That's why when I saw several people were coming into the premises, and I am convinced that this room at that time could accommodate about 200 people, and that was my rough estimation based on the capacity of the room that could accommodate people at that time.
Mr. Witness, would you be so kind enough to turn around and have a look at the auditorium and give us an estimate of how many people you think could be sitting in this auditorium?
មន្ទីរកន្លែងនោះបរិវេណកន្លែងនោះដូចជាកន្លែងនេះអញ្ចឹងមានកៅអីមានអីអញ្ចឹងថាតើកន្លែងដូចរបៀបហ្នឹងឬក៏យ៉ាងដូចម្ដេចកន្លែងប្រជុំខេត្តនោះ
ក៏កន្លែងហ្នឹងគឺកន្លែងគេ
Response. I was standing there right in front of the access to the room, and I could see people sitting in the room. Although after everyone entered the room, the door would be closed when the meeting was commenced. I believe that that's the number of people I believe to be sitting in the hall. There could have been about 200, and that's why I asked the investigators to put 200 as an official figure for that.
I think I have to repeat my question to you, Mr. Witness, and do the chamber the favor of turning around and give us an estimate of how many people you think could be sitting in this auditorium listening to your testimony.
អ្នកចូលរួមពីខាងក្រៅនេះហើយសូមឲ្យគាត់វាយតម្លៃពីចំនួនថាតើចំនួនប្រហែលប្រមាណបាទដើម្បីបញ្ជាក់ពីរឿងនេះបាទ
The President, Mr. Witness, can you please turn to your back and see? Yes, just have a quick look at the audience, and then you can be seated and just wait. Yes, just see the number of people in this room and wait before you can proceed to respond to the question. Counsel Kope, you may now proceed with your question.
My question to you, Mr. Witness, is how many people you think can fit in this auditorium?
បន្ទប់សាធារណជនខាងក្រោយខ្នងលោកមិញនេះប្រហែលប្រមាណតាមការសន្និដ្ឋានរបស់លោក
I can't give the exact figure of people in this room because people were sitting not all together in one place. You know, people were scattering in the place in the public gallery. But at the provincial hall, when I referred to, it's the space in the room. The room was the place where about 200 people could fit. The President, the question from counsel for Mr. Nunchia to you was that would you be able to tell the chamber how many people could be sitting or could be sitting in this room in the public gallery? Just give your rough estimation of the number of people who could sit back there. Response. I can see that now there are about 100 people, not over 100 people sitting in this public gallery.
But there's, Mr. Witness, a difference between how many people can sit in a room or auditorium, or how many people there are actually sitting in that same room. One is a question about the capacity, and the other is a question about how many people actually are sitting there. My question was if you could estimate for us the capacity of this auditorium. How many people can fit in this auditorium?
The President, legal lawyer for the civil party, you may now proceed.
I have an objection to make. I believe that this question is asking the witness to make an approximative assessment, that is, to expound on some hypothesis about how many people could be in the audience. I don't believe this question is very relevant, but perhaps I don't have the same notion of relevance as all other parties. I therefore lodge this objection.
If I may reply, Mr. President, the witness has indicated on the basis of his capacity to estimate how many people could fit in the provincial house that there were actually 200 people sitting there. I'm just trying to establish whether the capacity of this witness to estimate how many people were gathered in a room without him actually having been present in that room, if that capacity is well established. That's all what I'm doing.
The President, Madam Counsel for the Civil Party, are you now adding further comment on the objection you have just made, or would you wish to make a new point? If you are on the feet to say the same thing, then you are not allowed to do that. The President, the objection by lead co-lawyer for the civil party is appropriate, and the objection is sustained, although the question to ask a witness to estimate the number of people could be in the provincial hall is appropriate, but it is not possible for the witness in this courtroom to say, to tell the chamber how many people could be sitting, or the capacity of this room to accommodate the people in the public gallery. Only the owner of this building would know this very well. So, counsel, could you please now be directed to reframe your question?
I will move on, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, have I understood it correctly that you have not been inside the room of the provincial house where the people were gathered? You've never actually seen them sitting while you were in that room, correct?
Well, as I said earlier, my role was to guard the premise. I had no reason to attend the gathering or any meeting in the province. My role was merely to guard the premise. I received the order and I had to comply with the order, and I had to stop people if they were not supposed to be entering the premise. That was all I did at that time.
Were you able to actually watch through a window or a door or by some other means the people who were sitting there and who were listening to the speakers?
កំពុងអង្គុយស្ដាប់អ្នកដែលប្រកាសក្នុងការប្រជុំនោះបានទេ
បាទ
The provincial hall building was rather tall, and when the people entered the room, the door was closed. We could not see anything from outside. I only controlled the situation at the checkpoint where I was stationed, and if I stood there, I could not see what was going on inside the room.
Would it be fair to say that you were also not able to see who was addressing the people who were sitting there, who was talking? Correct?
Of course not. I did not even hear anything from that meeting hall.
Earlier you spoke about people, and I quote, from upper authority. Do you know whether people from upper authority were present in this room, and do you know, if yes, who they were?
As I said earlier, there were leaders, but I did not know who they were. I did not see their faces because, as I said, I was guarding somewhere in the front gate, but the leaders came to preside over the meeting from the back gate. So I did not know who those leaders were, and I did not even see their faces.
Thank you, Mr. Bitters. I would like to ask you a few questions about names of people. Do you know somebody called Ta Kleng?
Yes, I do. I heard the name of Ta Kleng, but I never met him in person. When I left the provincial town, he came to attend the rally in Sector 7. At that time, they gathered civilians to attend the rally. At that time, there were tens of thousands of civilians attending that rally. They prepared a stage for the leaders, and at that time, Ta Kleng was one of the person who addressed the rally. But I never saw his face. I never met him in person. That was the only occasion I heard of his name.
Do you know whether Ta Kleng was present during that meeting in the provincial house?
I did not see him. There were a lot of people at that time at the meeting. I do not know whether or not Ta Kleng was among the attendees. He could have been there or he could not have been there. I do not know.
Do you know a person called Ta Sot?
The same for Ta Sot. I only heard his name. He was one of the leaders in the sector at that time, And back then I was an ordinary citizen. I was a farmer. I heard of the names of Ta Sot and Ta Toi, but I never met them in person. I only knew from the villagers that they were the leaders of the sectors, but never had I met them in person.
Do you know whether Ta Sot or Ta Toi were present during this meeting in the provincial house?
That I did not know either. I did not see them, and even if I saw them, I would not recognize them because I never met them in person. Even those we ran into each other, I would not recognize that they were Ta Sot and Ta Toi because I had never met them in person.
Do you know a person called Ta San?
I know Ta San. I know him clearly because Ta San was an official of the district, Kandieng district. Later, Ta San attended a meeting and he was of a smaller build. He was rather short. He attended the meeting in Kampong Chnang, and at that time my unit got to know him once when he came to attend the meeting. But later on, in sometime in 1970 something, I cannot recall because I mentioned during my testimony with the investigator, Ta San was sought to commit suicide in his own room. He actually committed suicide. That's what I can recall of that event at that time.
Do you know whether Ta San was present during this meeting in the provincial house?
That I did not know either. I did not see him. As I said, he could have come to the meeting or he could have entered the room from a different gate. I do not know. But because there were many people. Actually, I only came to know this person sometime in 1977. He was the newly entered member afterward.
The last person I would like to ask you questions about, a person called Ta Mao. Do you know him?
I only knew Ta San. I did not know Ta Mao. I never met Ta Mao. But Ta Mao was the predecessor of Ta San. They were all officials from the district. They also supervised the work of my unit and the villagers in the rice field. But I never met him in person anyway.
Just to be absolutely clear and there's no misunderstanding, you are not aware of any names of Khmer Rouge commanders or officials or senior cadres who were present during this meeting in the provincial house. You are not able to give us any names, correct?
Yes, that is correct. I did not recognize anyone.
You have testified earlier, Mr. Witness, that after a few hours, all the persons that attended the meeting came out of the provincial house. Could you describe in more detail how that went? Did they come all out at the same time? Did they come out in small groups? Were they ordered to go out? Did they go out voluntarily? Those kind of details.
Those who left the meeting hall, I did not know the administrative arrangement for them, but as soon as the meeting completed, then they left the hall and they got on the trucks that they came with. And I noticed that people were not allowed to travel on a car by themselves, but they got on the trucks and the trucks left. And I also saw people shook their hand with each other and then they left the provincial compound.
Do you recall how Commander Pell left the building? Did he go by himself? Did he step into his own vehicle, yes or no?
For Comrade Pell, I did not see him get on the truck, but I only met him in Po village where I rode my motorcycle there, and I met him over there, and I only got to know him over there.
Mr. Witness, in your statement to the OCIJ, D125/176, ERN number 002-84418, page 4, on top of that page. The meeting, which took place for the whole morning, ended about 11 a.m. After the meeting had ended, they, the Lon Nol soldiers, rode back in their vehicles, which were crowdedly packed, to follow the Khmer Rouge cars that were leading them northward. A question to you is, did they leave in their own vehicles and cars or not?
At the time, I did not notice that there was any coercive measure for those people. In other words, people were not forced to get on the truck. They went back with their transport. I did not actually know the arrangement or order from the provincial administration at that time. I only noticed that people got on the trucks and then they left the premise. But I did not see any act of force to transport them out of the complex. No, I did not see that incident.
And that same statement on that same page, the same document number and ERN number, and also in your earlier testimony, you have stated and testified that the people leaving the premises were happy and that they were speaking to their relatives who were waiting outside. How were you able to determine that the people that were spoken to were the relatives of the people leaving the building of the provincial house.
Because along the fence of the provincial hall, it is the main road, and then people were actually staying beside this fence, and in addition, the car were also parked outside of the truck were parked outside the fence of the complex. So these people were listening and waiting for people when the meeting concluded.
I understand that, but my question to you is how were you able to establish that the people that were waiting were in fact relatives of the people leaving the building?
On this particular point, I do not understand, and I was not sure either, because when these people came to attend the meeting in the provincial hall, I did not know whether or not there was an order for them to attend the meeting, and I saw people waiting outside. I did not know the arrangement, whether or not these people were supposed to accompany the meeting's attendee, and they were supposed to stand outside. So I did not know the internal arrangement of this, because I was only a guard at that time. I did not know the administrative arrangement for these people.
I understand, Mr. Witness, but I'm trying to find or to understand why in the statement to the OCIJ you use the word relatives and not for instance, neighbors or people from the town or bystanders. You use the word relative. Why?
The reason why I concluded that they were relatives, it was simply because I saw them wave their hands, when those people left the premise on the trucks. So I jumped into conclusion that they must have known each other, or they must have been related. That's why they say goodbye to those people.
Do you remember how many people were actually standing outside speaking to the people who left the building and who were waving to them? How big was the crowd outside of the provincial house?
Again, I cannot come up with the exact number. I only knew that at that time the space was rather big. There were people coming in and out, but for people who were standing outside the premise, there were not many, only a few of them, and they only waved their hand as the people leaving the meeting room left on the trucks. I cannot come up with any specific numbers of people standing outside the provincial hall premise.
Were there any other things that day that you saw or that you heard that made you conclude? No, let me rephrase. Were there any things that you heard or saw that day on which you could tell whether the people that were leaving the provincial house were from the area, were from Pursat province, were locals, or were there circumstances which make you say that they came from outside For instance, the accent of the people speaking, those kind of things.
It was my guess that they were not people from outside the city. They actually were from the provincial town, because I think that they would not know that there was a meeting. So I believe that they were people from the provincial hall, provincial town rather. And people who were standing outside the premise were exchanging conversation with people entering the premise to attend the meeting. So I thought that they must have known each other, and they would be people who were residing somewhere near the provincial hall. That's why they knew each other.
I understand, Mr. Witness. Thank you for this answer, but it seems that maybe you are concluding certain things. And my question to you was whether you've actually seen things or heard things on the basis of which it was sure to you that they were in fact local people.
Because I believe that if they were from afar, they would not have known each other, because they must have lived in the same area. That's why they could know each other. Even though this is my guess, but it is drawn from the situation back then, and I believe that if people did not know each other, they would not raise hand or wave hand as they were leaving.
Were you able to see from the clothes, or from the way they were speaking, or from the way they were looking, from their demeanor, from which part of the province they were coming?
That I do not know. I do not know where they came from, because at that time we just attained peace. So I did not know where these people were coming from. And in addition, at that time I was rather young too. I was around 21 or 22. I did not actually pay attention to the action of the people when they were conversing with each other. I did not actually bother to understand that, and I did not even know the leaders at that time, because I was my position was far too low. I did not care to know about all of these things.
Have you heard that day, or have you found out later, whether anybody of those people who were gathered in the meeting in the provincial house came from, for instance, cities like Phnom Penh, Battambang, Siem Reap, Kep? Have you heard anything about that?
I am sorry, could you please repeat your question, because I don't quite get your point.
Of course. Have you heard that day from somebody, or have you heard in a later stage from somebody that in the midst of the people leaving the provincial house were also people who were coming from cities like Phnom Penh, Battambang, Siem Reap, Kep, or any other city outside of the province?
No, I did not hear such a thing from anyone, because when the trucks were leaving the premise, I at that time told the investigator that after they left the premise, then I asked for leave to visit my hometown. And then later on, I did not even bother to ask where the attendees were from. I did not want to know about that, because later I only care to handle the task that was assigned by Angka in my village. I did not know where those people who were attending the meeting came from.
If I understood correctly, Mr. Witness, the Pursat Provincial House is adjacent to the National Road number 5, which goes from Phnom Penh to Battambang. Is that correct?
No, the provincial hall is rather far from the National Road 5. In my estimation, it could have been around 500-600 meters away from National Road number 5. It is along the river stream. It is not adjacent to National Road number 5.
Let me rephrase, Mr. Witness. If you want to drive from Phnom Penh to Pursat Province, there's only, in that time, only one road leading from that city to the Pursat Province, and that is Road 5, correct?
Yes, road number 5 pass through the provincial town, and as for the provincial hall, it was actually close to a river stream, and it was about 500-600 meters away from National Road number 5. It is close to Sumpamir Pagoda.
Have you heard in the days after 17 April whether cars or vehicles with former Lon Nol soldiers or officials had come from Phnom Penh or from Battambang to Pursat Province?
Response: no, I had the permission to go back to reunite with my family, and my hometown was far from this. It's about 25 kilometers from this area. I did not know whether people would be transporting goods or foods through trucks, because at that time food would be transported through or by ox carts.
Let me be more specific, Mr. Witness. Do you know if before the meeting in the town hall in 1975 in April, vehicles with former Lon Nol soldiers or officials had come to Pusat province. And the same question for Battambang.
Response: I don't know. After I left that area, I never had the opportunity to come back and work at the place, so I can't answer your question.
In those days, after 17 April 1975, one of your duties was to be on guard. Were you, in those days, instructed to pay attention or to look for Lon Nol soldiers or officials coming from cities like Phnom Penh or Battambang or Siem Reap?
Response: I had been removed from the soldier and I become a victim myself. I had to ride ox cart carrying some fish paste and food, and I had to fear for my life, and I just don't remember the exact date regarding the people who were killed, but I heard from other people that a lot of people died from food shortages. And I also bore witness to the very little food ration distributed at the communal eating house. But as an ordinary person, I am a victim myself.
Mr. Witness, have I understood correctly that Commander Pell was the highest ranking military officer in Pusat province?
Response: I do not know whether he was the most high-ranking officer in that province. But Po village fort was the biggest military barrack in the vicinity, and he was the commander of that place. But I can't say whether he was the most senior person.
Do you know whether in that region, or more confined among the people that were in the provincial house, there were generals from the Lon Nol army, people who had the rank of general?
Response: I don't know. I was very young. I was too young to know whether people had different ranks. People could be wearing some rank on their uniform, but I just didn't understand that. And even the former provincial governor during those days would bump into me in a marketplace, for example. I would never know him. I would never know what rank he was wearing. So it's difficult for me to tell.
I'm asking you this question, Mr. Witness, because in your OCIJ statement, D125/176, ERN number 002-84417, page 3 in the middle, you said that the people that you heard Khmer Rouge soldiers speaking, that those people who were leaving the provincial house were the generals of the Lon Nol military. The generals of the Lon Nol military. Is that true? Did you hear that?
Response. That's what written in the record. That's what they said. The researchers or the investigators would be using the terms general, and there could be some high-ranking military officers at that time, but I can't exactly say whether these people were wearing any particular rank. It's my presumption that people who attended the meeting would be those of senior ranks, but I just don't know their exact rank or title.
Are you saying that you never used the word generals, but that was a word used by the investigators in that interview?
Response. I don't remember having said that, but it was a kind of unusual understanding that these people could have been the senior officers who attended the meeting. And when I was asked whether I knew any of the person to be wearing any rank as a general, things like that, I said I couldn't tell. As a soldier in the jungle, would never be wearing any rank on our uniform. And although perhaps soldiers who had high ranks would be wearing their rank on their uniform, but I was not informed. I did not learn to identify the ranks. The President intervenes. Mr. Kopi, how much time would you need to put questions to this witness?
Not so much time anymore, Mr. President. 20 minutes.
The President, thank you. You may proceed to put more questions after the adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn for 20 minutes. The next session will be resumed by 3 o'clock, but before that, Mr. International Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I'm sorry that I'm rising at this stage. But, Mr. President, can I inform the trial chamber of these developments over the last 1 hour or so? Mr. President, the colleagues of mine at the Office of the Co-Prosecutors have been watching the video that everyone saw in court today in preparation for your next witness. And it is the very strongly held view of two of my colleagues who have looked at footage from this video that this witness, Mr. Ung Chat, actually appears on the video and speaks with Tet Sambat. Now, Mr. President, can I explain that obviously the prosecutors only get to see Mr. Ung Chat when he's in court today. We haven't seen any previous photographs of him, and so we've never been able to match the face of the man on the video with Mr. Ung Chat. Now, that being the case, it's my respectful application, please, Mr. President, that time is allowed after my learned friend has completed his questioning, which he says will take, I think, only a further 20 minutes, that the OCP be entitled to isolate the portion of the video when it appears that a man who is either Mr. Ung Chat or who looks very similar to him is making statements about being at Tolpul Tray, and as far as I understand it, not simply present at the site, but also participating in some way. So this is highly relevant potential evidence, Mr. President. It has arisen in court this afternoon. It is not something that the OCP could have foreseen at an earlier date, and it's therefore my respectful application that time be allowed for Mr. Ung Chat to be given the opportunity to comment on these extracts. I understand, Mr. President, that my colleagues are seeking now to either obtain the footage or to cut down the footage so that there might be something for the judges to view later this afternoon. Thank you.
Mr. President.
The President, Counsel Kopi, you may now proceed.
A quick reply to the request of the prosecutor. In principle, I do not have any objection in showing this footage to the witness. I understand that these things arise at the very last moment. I have no problem with that. But then I would like to be allowed to finish my 20 minutes after I have seen the footage.
Mr. President, I agree.
Monsieur le Président, il va de soi que...
Mr. President, it goes without saying that if you grant leave to the co-prosecutor, we would maintain our request to have the last word. I maintain that this comes as a surprise. At the same time, the witness has just begun his testimony this morning, and so it appears to me that even if the document wasn't on the interface, the film had been reviewed by the co-prosecutors prior to this witness's testimony. I believe that the belatedness of this issue is problematic. We haven't raised issues up until now, but subject to the decision that you take, we maintain our request to reserve our right to question the witness afterwards. Thank you.
The President, court officer is now directed to assist the witness during the adjournment, and having returned to the courtroom at 3 o'clock, the court is adjourned.